Support for this program comes from viewers like you. Thank you.
The people of Kansas are the stars, and their stories are told by the master. Hello, welcome to another half hour of Hatteberg's People. Here's a preview.
They said, this just can't happen, but it may.
An historic Wichita castle faced an uncertain fate. The owner could no longer afford repairs, and finding a buyer seemed a daunting task. You'll discover what happened coming up. Also,
I can show you a stack of letters I've gotten from women who say, I've always wanted to be a cowgirl. I always wanted to own a ranch.
We travel to the Flint Hills, where women rule the roost at this cattle ranch. Learn how ridin and ropin is a life-changing experience for these cowgirls. Plus,
it's a passion. Next to my wife and my children, music is the best thing I have in my life.
Ivan Kelty played with some of the best in the business, but he just got so much joy playing with the guys in his local band. I caught them practicing for a big event back in 2004, and we'll have this story.
I'm hostess on a show called Open House.
Where are your earrings today, Miss May?
Well, I took them off.
Why'd you do that?
Well, I had one of one pair and one of another.
we'll take a look back at some of the early pioneers of Kansas television. It was truly a golden era with some truly great talents. Hello, I'm Susan Peters.
And I'm Larry Hatteberg. We'll have all that and more on this edition of Hatteberg's People. These stories are like old friends. Their lives radiate from the screen like prophets of the past. They were teachers, but not in a classroom. Instead, they taught about life to those around them who cared to listen, and I was their student.
Saving history oftentimes doesn't come cheap, and that has kept the fate of one of Wichita's most historic buildings up in the air for decades now.
Now, the real concerns emerged in the early 90s. The owner of the 1888 Crum Castle was wondering whether it was time to clear the place out and tear it down.
It is one of Wichita's most unique and historic homes, the Crum Castle at 11th and North River Boulevard. Finished in 1888, Wichitan May Crum is only the third owner.
When I bought this, I thought, well, I was just going into an old house, you know, and I lived here several years before I knew that I was living in a house that was filled with lost art.
Everyone who comes to the Crum Castle wishes they owned it. They like to walk down this old staircase. Staircase that was made in London.
Wonderful feeling.
They like to walk down it just
and
once.
I think most anybody that would walk down these stairs would feel the same way.
But there's a problem. The old house needs work.
Now, since I'm on Social Security, I just cannot take care of it. And if I don't do the roof, the water will come down in here and ruin all this fine art in here.
The castle is 5 stories high with 13 fireplaces, 28 rooms, and hand-carved woodwork throughout.
This fretwork here came from a debtor's prison in Scotland. It is several hundred years old, and one of the biggest conversational pieces in the castle.
But the conversation now is how to save the old place. And here's the tragedy. May says if she can't sell it, she'll have an auction for the contents and then have the place bulldozed.
Oh, I feel terrible. I sure would. And not only me, but the people in Riverside and the people that have known about this castle, even from out of state and out of the city, they'd feel badly about it too. They said, this just can't happen, but it may.
Wonder what this corner would look like without the castle? And without the castle would go a piece of Wichita's history. Take another look around. On the 3rd floor, a room that was a ballroom in the late 1800s.
I've been up here when it was hailing, when it was raining, when it was snowing, and when it was 113 degrees.
And then there's the tower.
This was a lookout tower.
But below, history is of little concern when time is not being kind to this old building.
Right up here, the ceiling has come down. As you notice, all the ceiling is wood. All right, look at our stones here. They're coming down too. And right over here, this one has pulled loose from the wall.
While some don't think May is serious about having the building torn down, she insists she is.
No, I can't pay those taxes right now. I could maybe swing in here another year, but I just as well start preparation now to do this.
Everyone concedes it would be a shame to lose this property, but unless she can sell it, one-of-a-kind views from the castle tower will only become a memory.
People come here from out of state and they say, Wichita's so much prettier than we thought it was.
A pretty view, but a dim future for an old castle.
I think people know when they're at the end of the rope.
Well, the good news is May ended up finding a buyer, and the new owners spent more than $3 million renovating that old castle. They've opened it to tours at Christmas time, decorating it very festively and elegantly each year. It's one of Wichita's most important historic homes ever. Great place to visit.
It really is. Okay, now we're going to go to the pastures of the Flint Hills, where cattle ranching is an equal opportunity profession, at least to Jane Coger.
And there's no glass ceiling on her ranch, just green grass, blue skies, lots of livestock, and the chance for women to discover their inner peace by simply working on the prairie.
There's just a real sense of being at home here. When his ears come through, shut it.
This is nature's classroom, a place where the prairie is a quiet teacher and the cattle stubborn students.
Oh no, you don't want to eat? This should be against the law to like what you're doing so well.
Jane Coger is the matriarch of her 6,000-acre homestead ranch in Chase County. It's not far from Matfield Green.
It's a lot of work, but you know, I wouldn't ranch again without Prairie Women or a guest program. Another heifer.
Her ranch serves two purposes. It's a working cattle ranch, and it's also part of her Prairie Women adventures and retreat getaways.
It's just to share what I've been fortunate enough to be able to do.
Her for women-only ranch attracts guests from the U.S. and overseas. It's a place where women can learn the cattle business from the ground up, or they can simply go for a quiet walk on the prairie and enjoy the isolation that prairie life brings.
I can show you a stack of letters I've gotten from women who say, I've always wanted to be a cowgirl. I always wanted to own a ranch. And all we're trying to do is give them that opportunity.
Yeah, it's kind of chilly, but we're getting them down there. It's good to be walking. It warms me up. Come on.
And when women come here, the things that I want them to experience are internal for them as well. A sense of empowerment that they got to do something they didn't think they could do. The retreat part is that I'd like for them to be able to walk out on the top of one of these Flint Hills or walk down to the creek and just get back in touch with themselves. Of course I would stay here. This is, I don't know, sometimes I think we can actually grow down into the soil. It happens. This is where I belong. I'm comfortable here. I'll be here without Prairie Women. I'll be here without a ranch. This is where I belong.
Jane was inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame back in 2016. She's still running the Homestead Ranch and living off the grid in a hay bale house. It's an incredible place. I love to go out to the Flint Hills.
Oh yeah.
It's one of Kansas's most greatest possessions.
Assets.
Those hills.
Absolutely. I mean, when you go out to the Flint Hills, you know you're in God's country.
And
you just are.
And you are alone.
Mm-hmm. And you're alone, which is good sometimes.
It is great.
The next story is about a Kansas musician who played with some of the biggest stars as a young man.
Now, those opportunities had come and gone by the time I interviewed Ivan Kelty in 2004, but he was just as happy playing in his local band before a hometown crowd.
Music's a part of me forever.
Wichita Ivan Kelty can't imagine doing anything else except being here where the beat goes on. Kelty's band, called the Jazz Cats, practices at the Midian Shrine Temple and is one of many you'll hear during the Festival of Bands next weekend.
They're playing way beyond where they thought they would ever be in their wildest dreams.
Lots of experience down here. That's former Mayor Don Enoch on the piano. And Kelty says finding a place to play is the difficult part.
Because this band gives us a place, a venue, which doesn't exist anymore. You know, when I was young, we had the Blue Moon, we had the Trig, we had the Teepee, we had a variety and a myriad of places for young musicians to go fail and then come back and try to get better. And that doesn't exist for the young musician today, or the old musician in our case.
To be a musician almost means you have to have another job, and Ivan does. He is the owner of Alternative Programs. His company works with those who've been sentenced to house arrest.
I really thoroughly enjoy doing that and helping people get on with their life.
But music is never far from his desk.
Yeah, just all kinds of music. It doesn't make any difference what kind. It's all good.
One more thing about local musicians, never sell their talent short. While incredibly modest, Ivan has played with some of the best. Glenn Miller, Woody Herman, Les Brown, and others.
You know, I was a kid. I was like 18 years old, so I couldn't appreciate it. You know, I have the freedom to be me with my instrument, and I watch all these other people do those things. And their life just gets fuller because of it. You know, it's an incredible feeling, and those that can't feel it are really missing something. Well, it's a passion. It's a passion. Next to my wife and my children, music is the best thing I have in my life. And it's as simple as that.
Now, Ivan kept playing for several more years before passing away in 2012. And I liked being around him because he and everybody in that band just enjoyed playing, just for the fun of it. And they were having such a great time.
They get such joy out of just playing their instruments.
Exactly right. That's why they do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it was the year that Herbert Hoover became president, when the first Academy Awards were presented, and the stock market crashed, ushering in the Great Depression.
And it was also the year that J. Lloyd Brown of Wichita became a barber. It was proved to be a lifelong career that he loved so much, and he was not about to give it up.
It doesn't take J. Lloyd Brown long to arrive at work. Work that he's been doing for over 50 years.
Well, it's a pleasure to work with people.
Brownie, as most folks call him, has been cutting 12 to 15 heads of hair a day since November of 29. He took up barbering over farming for one reason.
They all look like they're eating pretty good.
And in 29, that was important.
I never learned to smoke. I never learned to drink. I didn't think it did me any good. Didn't make me feel any better. I just never got into those bad habits.
Perhaps it's the lack of these bad habits that's given him his lengthy career.
I've seen too many fellows come in and take a retirement, go home, sit down, try not to. I'm retired. I don't have to do nothing. But you better keep active. I don't care what you do.
Part of the pleasure of this career is meeting customers like Curly Barkus.
Oh, I've tried different places, but I never could get as poor a job anyplace else.
My dad always said that if a man didn't have a sense of humor, you should take him out and shoot him. He wasn't worth a damn.
Yeah. Well, he's pretty good, decent barber. No fooling, but a little high on price. But
as the day progresses, Curly and Brownie talk about the yesterdays of life.
We used to try that. We lived in there for
that was
several years, and then they moved it away, you know.
That was Glenn Odom's house.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of chairs over, Brownie's son is in his 28th year of the profession, and he says it's kind of nice having Dad around.
Well, I think he's pretty hard to match as far as being consistent being here long hours, being on time.
There ain't no way you can make $200.
Hard to keep up with him as far as stamina.
A stamina that's given Brownie a lifelong profession of satisfaction. And by the way, Brownie is 80 years old.
Yeah, all of that.
That is good.
I run out of hair. That's the way he always makes me cut it.
It ain't bad. It ain't
Oh, yeah,
bad.
we get a lot of fun out of everybody. They always have something to tell us.
But it's always a pleasure to come in here. I'd feel like a damn heel going that place out. We'll see you later.
Thank you, Crum.
Now that was 1987, and Brownie continued barbering until 1996, and that made 67 years in all. But that's not the end of the story.
My dad, one time, he did this. He says, "How's that look?" The guy said, "Pretty good, but I can't see anything. How come?" He says, "I don't wear glasses."
Now Brownie's son Ronnie is still at it, and he may just break his dad's record. Ronnie just celebrated his 60th year cutting hair at that same barbershop.
You don't make a lot of money, but you have a wonderful relationship with your clients.
And with the exception of the original Brownie not being there anymore, you can see that that barbershop hasn't changed that much. Ronnie, or Little Brownie as some call him, was 20 when he started working with his dad, and he loves it just as much as his dad did and says he'll keep cutting hair as long as he can. If you're doing what you like and you did it with your dad and you know what you're doing, heck, keep doing it.
Can you imagine being able to be that satisfied and that happy and that content? And he is, and his father was, and it's what makes the world go round.
You just keep on keeping on.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you think about the real greats in the history of Kansas television, it's not just flattery to say that Larry is right at the top of the list.
And so is she. But
yeah.
I came along more than a decade after the bunch in this next story. They were the local stars when I grew up watching Cake TV, and they became my mentors in the early days. Now, I did this story for Cake TV's 50th anniversary back in 2004.
Cake Television, KAKE-TV, Channel 10, Wichita.
It is a beautiful day in Cake Land. It is nice out there.
I am hostess on a show called Open House.
Where are your earrings today, Miss Kay?
Well, I took them off.
Why'd you do that?
Well, I had one of one pair and one of another.
The hour for nightmare is once again at hand.
With a vest and a little turned-up cap and a bow tie, we could make you look like Elmer Fudd.
Oh, Miss Barbara, I bought my special Forest Ranger telescope. This is the one I use to see old Bugs Bunny.
From Freddie Fudd to Captain Bill to the old cobbler and the host and Rodney, Cake employed some of the most talented people in the country. And as we look back to those early years, it was John Froon who may have been one of the greatest local talents of his time.
Picked out two very nice ladies.
John, first and foremost, was an accomplished writer.
Well, we hope you liked it. That's our show.
TV director Carl Chance worked with Froon.
Basically, he was a creative thinker and obviously talent.
John did weather on Cake for years, and he didn't have a meteorological degree. Greg Gamer was his co-worker.
John was such a professional that he kind of made it fun.
Froom also created the beloved Old Cobbler, a children's show that every kid in central Kansas knew and loved.
You know, every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock, we come along with that little rascal Dennis the Leprechaun.
Girls, and I think we can do it real quick. We have just a couple of minutes.
And then there was Party Line, a show that ran over the noon hour and had 50 women every day as an audience. If you were home at noon, you watched John Froom's Party Line. But John was surrounded by more incredible talent. Bill McLean on radio and TV was John's sidekick on Party Line.
You could be better than you are.
And we didn't have a history to look back on and say, well, this is the way they used to do it, because they didn't used to do it.
Bill also created a children's show, Captain Bill and Pete the Pelican. Later, along came Captain Bill and Popeye. Now, Popeye was Clarence Brown, and he so looked the part.
Clarence was really a fairly handsome man, but when he took his teeth out, he felt that he wasn't. And then when an attractive mother would show up for her child, then Clarence didn't want to have his teeth out.
Just let that cottonfish and cottontail will come right. Can't catch him either.
Another children's show included Henry Harvey as Freddie Fudd, and if you were a kid, you'd love to be in Freddie Fudd's treehouse. Henry loved the children, and the ratings for his shows soared. But Henry had other shows too. More about him later in the week. One of the campiest shows ever produced at Cake was Nightmare with Tom Leahy and sidekick Rodney.
The persistent monsoon that moans in the night.
Isn't that awful?
No, it's
My wife looks at me and says, you are strange.
It is called The Frozen Ghost.
It was fun. Wasn't lucrative, but it was fun.
Ronnie, turn that blasted thing down. You hear me?
Cake was a real pioneer that way. It really was.
Gentlemen, music, please, for our First Lady of Cake, Ethel Jane King.
And completely different on the feminine side was Ethel Jane King, who became queen of the airwaves with a show designed just for women.
Open house.
Ethel Jane's Open House quickly hit #1, and her cool demeanor never varied.
And I'd like to intercept that pass to introduce to you a real old pro when it comes to covering the sports scene, Mr. Jack Miller. Jack?
Another great talent was the sometimes difficult and always bit of a rascal, Jack Miller. Jack was Cake's sports director, one of the best sports writers of his time. Jack also had a reputation for enjoying the spirits, even on air.
Occasionally we would get a phone call asking if Jack had been drinking. And invariably, that would be the night that he hadn't been.
And if you like to dance, Cake's Carl Berg hosted the Saturday Dance Party. We'll let him explain.
Yes, sir. Every Saturday afternoon at 2:30, all the teenagers from all over Kansas are our stars right here on the Cake Dance Party. But mainly the stars are the kids themselves, who have fun where they find it.
And you couldn't have a Kansas TV station without a cowboy. Dusty Herring was Cake's answer. Deputy Dusty had his own kids show and even a band. But over time, the microphone has gone silent for many of the early Cake pioneers. Dusty, Ethel Jane, Henry Harvey, John Froome, Jack Miller, and Clarence Brown have all passed on. But these early television pioneers left us so much more. They gave us childhood memories. Memories that today are still in black and white, but are oh so colorful.
In just a minute, it's the news at...
How much do we love seeing that old video and those people who really made Kansas television great?
They wrote the book on how to do television.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knew because they started television. So they were some of the most talented people I had ever seen in my life. Whatever happened on television, they could do it, they could recover from it, and move on. They had such great depth of talent. I was so lucky, and people like you were too, to be around these people.
Right.
You just wanted it to rub off a little. That's all you wanted.
It to.
Yeah.
The thing that impressed me the most, they did hours and hours of live television.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't taped.
Right.
It was live.
Live commercials.
It's live commercials.
Everything.
And they did it all.
Yep.
Love looking back.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. If you have a comment or questions, fire it off to Hatteberg's people at kpts.org. We love hearing from you. I'm Susan Peters. Thank you for watching.
And I'm Larry Hatteberg. Great to have you with us. We will see you next time.